Hope you're doing great. B for victory. Good morning, Boma time victory, Bitcoiners. We love it, man. Lucky. Hello, team. Catching live. Good morning. Glad you made it. T-Dog Yo-Yo. Good morning, Bitcoiners. Good morning, T-Dog. Good morning, early birds. Indeed, Double B. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Sean. Daniel, what's up, my man? Good morning, Breakup Bunch. Loving life and doing Bitcoin. We're doing some Bitcoin, and we are loving life today. Ben, good morning, team. Good morning, Ben. Thomas, good morning, all. Indeed, good morning. Hope in the internet for a healthy connection today. Thomas, I think it will be. I did some, reinstalling of this and that, and yesterday we should be okay. It looks like it was just an anomaly. But indeed, when I got off yesterday, I looked into it, and it was, even though the connection was fast, it was telling me I had an obstruction, which was not true. So it did require some software redoing, and we were good. So haven't had the warnings since. Space drop maxis. Hello, Hodl T. We'll talk about some space drop candidates today. We might talk about who deserves a drop or two. Jason. Good morning, fam. Jam. We're going to be talking about jamming today, boy. I learned a new term, and I love it. Good morning. When your phone says to put on a mask and hide from the aliens under your desk, resist. We'll be talking about the phones today, too. Felipe, what's up, my man? Send U.S. taxpayer money to UK. I mean, Ukraine. Nick, what's good, Bitcoiners? Indeed. Lots of stuff's good. Greetings from the land of sun and sand, where the future is bright with Bitcoin. Beautiful King Musa. Good morning, coffee and Bitcoin and Moscow time. Great combo for a fresh start every day. Thank you, P-Man. We like it. It is a fresh start. 300 billion added yesterday. Assalamu Moscow time. Thank you, Muslim Bitcoiner. Remember when I struggled with assalamu alaikum? That was a year ago, right around now. Muslim Bitcoiner is one of the original Breakup gang people. Woohoo! $400 per gallon for Ukrainian diesel. It wasn't so bad. I filled up yesterday at near zero because I will refuse to buy gas in Canada. I won't do it, right? I don't want to give them anything, like zero. So I usually wait to buy when I cross the border. So I was like trickling across the border when I came in 2 days ago. So yesterday when I went out, I had to get some gas. So I was basically at zero. I think my indicator said I had about 5 miles left. And it cost me, Vermont's a little cheaper than I think most states. So it only cost me $70, but that's in Canada, $100 fill up. So we're there, but I've seen the California people. Geez, what a bummer. But the good news is, we got a sunrise. Who cares about gas prices? The sun is up, right? And Bitcoin's running. So all that's left for us to do is have a coffee and talk about what's new. One of my daughters painted this cup. Excellent. All right. So we got a fun Moscow time today. It's great. $3.28 a gallon in Tampa. Yeah, it's about that here. $3.50 a gallon for the cheap stuff. There is a $4.93 grade a gallon, but I don't need it. All right, let's do some Moscow time. There's a few really funny ones today. I mean, really funny, right? So Biden weighed in on the Republican infighting, and his worry, according to Reuters, is that it could really hurt Ukraine aid. Right? Ukraine not liking this fighting. Now, what happened when Trump talked about the border wall for a couple of years, right? Was it the number one issue that liberals were voting against when Trump was about building the wall, right? Remember, the wall was everything in 2016. And then, of course, you had to open the borders after in reaction to Trump going on about the wall, right? Well, how did that go? How did the no wall go? According to Fox News and multiple reports, Reuters, and get ready to hear this all the time, turns out the Biden administration is now waiving 26 federal laws to allow the border wall construction in South Texas. Mayorkas, the guy in charge of the border, cites an immediate need to waive regulations, build border wall in Texas. This is the world we live in. Pretty good stuff. This one, don't let this bother you, but it turns out the FBI has a new list of people they're watching, right? Newsweek says it this morning. Everyone's talking about it. Exclusive: Donald Trump followers targeted by FBI as 2024 election nears. The Donald Trump's army of MAGA followers is the problem, right? We got some more of these ones, right? There's a few more of these ones. The government believes the threat of violence and major civil disturbances is so great, it has quietly created a new category of extremists. MAGA. I've already been a terrorist in one country in Canada, so it doesn't really bug me to be in the United States, dude. It's okay. Guys, if you're worried about being a terrorist in your own country, don't worry about it. It's not, as long as you're a Bitcoiner. I would worry if I was like, had a bank account and all this stuff, right? But they're going to call you an extremist. Now, I'd get worried if I was thrown in prison, right? That won't be cool. But we're not there yet. Coming close, though. Getting close. Oh, this one's great, right? We got some mind reading from MSNBC. Trump looks especially angsty in his New York fraud trial. This could be why. The former president's image and real estate empire alike could be torn apart. It appears that it's finally sinking in for Trump, right? So this article is all about how the other trials didn't bug him that much, right? But this time they know. They went into his mind. Right? They just moved away a bit of the earwax and stuff and took a look inside, and you didn't know, but thoughts actually form in language in your brain. So if you just look inside, you can see the letters. Looks like a video game. The letters try to come into order, and you can just read it. Like it's only in English though, so you got to read English, right? So if you want to mind read Trump and you don't speak English, it's not that easy. I'll tell you right now, it's not that easy, right? You got to learn English first, right? Here's what they say, right? Here's what I guess, what's this lady's name? Lisa Rubin. We don't know if she's related to Jennifer Rubin, right? But this is where the mind reading comes in, right? Trump may have believed that staring down, gesturing at, or otherwise attempting to demean and discredit James, and then his former accountant Donald Bender in person, would be satisfying or perhaps politically advantageous. And the breathless media coverage of his body language, hallway press conferences, and even what he ate for lunch yesterday suggests he would have been right, at least in part. Yet that discounts what it might feel like for Trump to see and hear the evidence. Watching prosecutor Kevin Wallace highlight Trump's sharpied signature on the statements of financial condition, or hearing Bender clearly testify that at no time did Mazars undertake to verify the data provided by the Trump Organization or even assure its compliance with generally accepted accounting principles, clearly ruffled Trump. And that this could be the next several weeks of his life might just be sinking in. Oh my goodness. Have you seen, by the way, the Letitia, or whatever her name is, in New York? She looks like the dumbest cross-eyed moron you've ever seen in your life. She's trying to read. She did a Twitter thing about how, doing the old no one is against the law, no one is above the law or whatever. But she's got to read the text on top. She's all like, all right, I got a cross-eyed family member. I don't have a problem with people's cross-eyed looks. Okay. In general, I'm in fact very sympathetic and have a natural affinity and attraction to those people because, a significant family member has the issue. And so when I see it, right, my natural instinct is to like the person. But when I see them trying to read a statement off a teleprompter, I gotta tell you, she's on the list for space drops. The AG of New York has to go up in space. I mean, we're all into diversity for even space drops, right? Space drops have to be diverse. I think you can't just drop a couple. White guys are the worst in World War III. They're the worst, right? Most of our trouble is from white men. I would say I don't have a problem saying that, right? I don't have a problem saying that the people who are throwing America, throwing the US dollar, throwing the entire system into the garbage, the people that are responsible for destroying it, mostly white guys, honestly, right? Most of the people putting MAGA supporters on a list, white guys, right? Most of the people doing DEI, equity and inclusion, white guys, right? They're the ones doing it, right? They're selling at other white guys. That's happening, right? But it's mostly white guys. So, right, there's gonna be a lot of white guys that we got to drop from space. Mostly white guys, I would say, but we gotta think in terms of equity and inclusion. And I nominate Letitia for space drop. All right. So she's on my list. All right. She's on my list. And only because of that Twitter thing. It was so rock bottom stupid for her to make those statements. She's got to go. Got to go. Sorry, Letitia. MSNBC also talking about judges can't keep letting Trump act this way. They must impose gag orders now. It's way past time to end Trump's special treatment. No other American engaging in the same conduct could be afforded such legal leeway. Here it's that he's getting special treatment, but they can't let it go, right? So obviously you can read this MSNBC article. It turns into no one is above the law. No one is above the law. Nobody. No one is above the law. So there you go. That one's pretty good. And finally, my last one, and it's really good, right? It's really good. So the Pope, the old Pope, right? He's come around. Point of no return. Pope challenges leaders at UN talks to slow global warming before it's too late. So the Pope released this big UN talking point thing today for global warming, slow the things. So I want to talk about that later. But that's the last of my Moscow time for today. Let me see if I missed any. Oh yeah, this one's pretty good. This is a throwaway. Biden names ex-Hunter colleague to helm whistleblower agency. It's too good. Thank you, God of the simulation, for always providing. We really appreciate it. Guess that Pope isn't that well. We're going to talk about the Pope. We're going to talk about the Pope today. Yeah, his hotline to God is not so useful, apparently. Because that's the whole thing about the Catholics, right? For people who don't know, Muslim Bitcoiner, the Protestant thing and the Catholic thing. If you didn't know what's really going on there, for all those not Christian or not interested or don't know the history of it, really the main difference between Catholic and Protestant is that they got a hotline bling in the Catholic thing to get to God, right? That's the whole hierarchy in the order. So you tell all your secrets in confessional to your pastor, your priest tells it to the bishop. Bishop calls up Pope and says, yo, Pope, drop a line to God. And that's how it's supposed to work according to the Catholics, right? The big thing Martin Luther did was, no, you can actually talk directly. You can talk directly, right? And of course, that the Pope has that famous quote, right? Anyone who tells you that you can have a direct relationship with Jesus is lying to you. There's no such thing, right? So they've been saying that for like a couple hundred years now, right? So, but the Pope, right? He sent this memo to God. So careful, right? He sent it right up, right? He used the hotline bling and said, yo, God, I'm dropping a report on global warming, bro. Check it out, right? That's what he's doing. All right. So 2 days ago, something happened that was really funny. Now, it doesn't start funny. I guess there was a shooting or something at some college, and who cares about that stuff, right? We don't do shooting talks here. We're not a shooting channel, right? So whenever there's a shooting, you're never going to hear about it here. I don't care. In general, I don't care about the shootings. Okay. And so normally you're not going to get any shooting news here. If ever there's a shooting, I will go out of my way to avoid talking about it. But this one I had to talk about because it was a little funny, right? So it's not the shooting and the dying. That's not cool. We're not going to be laughing about that, right? But of course, Fox News and all the news networks, whenever there's one of these shootings, right, it's all cameras on. That's why I don't do it. If you want to find out about the shootings, you're going to get tons of coverage out there. Right? Don't ever worry about coverage of shootings because they love it, right? So there was a shooting at some kind of Morgan State University, multiple people shot, right? So Fox News, we're going live to the shootings at the college, right? Oh my God, what about guns? Is this going to turn into another gun debate? Right? And they put on, they were taking calls, right? Because like, what's going on there and what's happening and da 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 da. So So, so some grandmother or shit calls in and she's like, oh, there's people dead or something like that, and then it's going on and on, right? But someone else calls in, right? It turns out it's Mark Dice. If you guys don't know who Mark Dice is, you got to follow Mark Dice on YouTube. He doesn't do much on Twitter, but Mark Dice is one of the top YouTubers describing this stuff. He goes way back with Alex Jones. I think most of you probably know who he is. Really funny stuff, really short videos, really excellent stuff. So Mark Dice calls Fox News and puts on a voice, Tyrone. Yo, I'm Tyrone. So they let him go in there. He realizes they're not going to be doing any checking because they're so desperate to get like on scene comments and from the shooting zone or whatever, right? So they're gonna go live, right? They're just gonna go live, right? Fuck, we're doing it live. So they go into this guy Tyrone, right? So Tyrone starts, but he puts a voice on, and he starts talking about how they were just at the college in the dorms watching Tucker Carlson on X, and he starts going on about how Tucker's doing so much better at X now that he's not with Fox News, and how they used to watch Fox News, and the only reason he's watching Fox News tonight is because of the shooting at his campus, and he otherwise normally wouldn't watch it. He's too much watching Tucker. It's much better on X, and corporate media doesn't allow you to say what you want, and all of this stuff, right? So of course the guy is just like, whoa, and they got to cut, and they got to go back to another speaker and another caller, and they got to do all this stuff, right? And now Mark Dice didn't let anyone know this happened, right? But people picked it up on, they understood. And then the next morning, right, at 11 a.m. yesterday, Mark Dice says, many people are saying I prank called Fox News live on air last night, but that's not true. I culture jammed them, right? And that's why I got this word up. Bitcoin culture jamming the money printer, which is our theme for the day. But I just love this term culture jamming. It's a thing I didn't know what it was. Mark Dice told me about it. Mark Dice is a communications guy. Like his background is media communications. He's a big Mockingbird fella. He sells books on like bilderbergs. I don't know about all the stuff in the books. And, my impression of some of these things like bilderbergs are a little different probably than other people, just because I've met people who've actually gone to bilderbergs, right? And their impression is people who I trust and know, and like really close friends of mine all say it's a big scam and fraud and it's a bunch of losers. So I'll take their word for it. They might be wrong, but it's just firsthand evidence, so usually pretty good. So Mark Dice calls them in, right? And this is what culture jamming is, right? He says, I culture jammed them. It wasn't a prank call. Culture jamming is when you subvert the media in a creative way in order to use the same form of media to critique media itself. Get it right. Does this mean I'm not invited to the Christmas party, Fox? Right? So culture jamming. And the reason I bring up culture jamming is because it's exactly that, right? The ability to use a bad event to get attention, the ability to draft behind an event like this in order to turn the camera on itself. In this case, of course, it's the same story. What he did a video on it, right? Mark Dice did a video on it on YouTube and talked about it. He says, well, whenever they have these shootings, right, they'll tend to put all the focus on FBI being heroes, and he goes right into that whole aspect of the FBI having its reputation laundered through these events, right? So they could be the worst. They could be keeping lists on MAGA supporters, creating new extremist lists. But if there's a shooting, the news will cover them as if they're all the hero, the nice guys, right? They're there. If it wasn't for them. So this whole thing of exploiting a negative event and using it to amplify your message, right? Very good and strategically important way of doing things. Now, Bitcoiners, I would suggest, have this capacity to culture jam almost everything that's going on right now, because we're absolutely watching the old world collapse before our eyes. There's no doubt about it. We're still in the collapse phase. We're still in the demolition, destruction phase. And Bitcoin culture has allowed us to see through all of these systems that are absolutely broken and need to be penetrated, need to be seen through, need to have a culture jam throughout, right? The first one, and the most obvious one to all of us, is the financial. So the FBI is one part of it, right? So the MAGA extremists, and the financial one is next. We'll talk about the financial one next. But the FBI, take this for example. They've got they've got the Dinesh D'Souza, right, coming out with a movie now on the FBI about how terrible it is, how far it's fallen. Now, Dinesh D'Souza creates entertaining videos, but he's on top of the target usually, right? While he does use manipulative culture jamming stuff because he tells stories, hires actors, reconstitute things. Most people who can't really tell the difference between actors and fake documentaries and mockumentaries and unscripted reality TV and that kind of stuff can get kind of lost in his stuff, like the Mules one, right? The 3,000 Mules or whatever. He's right to be doing a show on the crookedness of the 2020 situation, right? That everyone agrees with. Now, he went with the mules and the phones. It wasn't really like, it was convincing if you watched it, of course, right? But it didn't convince me in general that he had the smoking gun for what happened in 2020. But it nevertheless was over the target and absolutely correct in the direction, right? The specifics, I think, were definitely wrong. But the direction was right. So now he's got a new movie about the FBI. You had even Elon Musk promoting it yesterday, saying FBI's got to go. You had Dinesh D'Souza, Vivek Ramaswamy, right, coming out, and his plan is to get rid of the FBI altogether. So, you got the FBI out there calling half of the American population extremists, half, right? So I think we're in this culture jamming period now with the FBI, which is welcome, and we should be there, right? Because of how dastardly they've become. But now let's move to the financial piece. And I think the financial piece is one of the more relevant ones here, right? You've got the financial security, right? Norbert Michael here. He's at Cato Institute. Talking about the FDIC's, so the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation guy so it's the one who backs all of your deposits in the United States, right? So it's the one that has insurance up to the $100,000 deposit limit, but they're also the group that got involved with the Silicon Valley Bank failures and Republic Bank failure and Signature Bank failure and all the stuff that happened a year ago after SBF. What Nick Carter calls Operation Choke Point 2.0, right? So Norbert Michael, this fella who is a Cato Institute researcher, goes into this guy Grunberg's speech, right? And talks about all the terrible ideas and what he says here exposes flaws in his financial stability mandate because he's basically got it all backwards, right? He's got it backwards. So he breaks it all down. Nick Carter comments on it as well and says it's alarming that the head of the FDIC, who presided over Operation Choke Point 1.0 under Obama and Operation Choke Point 2.0 under Biden, is so deeply misinformed about regulation and financial stability. While we're at it, when we were going to talk about the fact that SBNY, what's SBNY? Signature Bank of New York, was abruptly closed because DFS lost confidence in the bank leadership, aka shuttered them because they simply didn't like their crypto business, especially Signet. When are we going to talk about the fact that FDIC blocked the sale of Signet to would-be acquirers, violating their mandate to maximize value from the disposal of bank assets? So basically here, this is that whole story where there was a buyer for Signature Bank's crypto apparatus in the middle. So weirdly, I have a bit of a history overlapping with all of this stuff. So Signature Bank, when I was at CoinDesk, another New York bank, was very eager to speak at our events, Consensus. And I knew them as Donald Trump's bank, right? They became sort of known at the time already as Donald Trump's bank. So I did, in fact, arrange for them to announce the creation of Signet years ago at Consensus, which they did. And I met some of the reps and some of the people who were going to do it. And then when I was working with Kraken, right? So for those of you who don't know my professional history in the industry, I'll reiterate it really quickly. I was a lawyer at the Senate Banking Committee in Canada. I looked into Bitcoin 10 years ago now. I'm lobbying everyone to talk about and do a study on Bitcoin, which I secured by the end of October 2013. After that, I joined. I did a bit of time at the co-working space in Toronto, where Vitalik was still writing Bitcoin magazine articles, and also some yellow paper for some coin he launched a little while later. And from there, I joined CoinDesk when I came to New York. After CoinDesk, I spent time with Kraken as well, where I went back to some of my legal work because I was very interested in creating a bank that had no fractional reserve lending and that operated as a Bitcoin bank. So I was very interested in getting behind the Bitcoin bank efforts. So we got a bank license not long after I joined in Wyoming. It was a project that I had been interested in and thought about for a long time. And when I joined the strategy team, that's where I went with Kraken in order to focus on Bitcoin banking. It was a very small team. We had a very interesting setup. We reported directly to the CEO about business lines and things like that. And one of our members had just come over from from Signature Bank. So we were only about 5 or 6 people on the team, but one of them was actually the architect and guy in charge of Signet, and was the guy who was out there making all kinds of business lines. And it had become a huge clearinghouse for crypto, by the way. It became like a bit like a settlement layer for exchanges between them, which is a really powerful technology. So they would settle their accounts with this technology. So not really consumer facing so much, but actually an important thing for the industry. That's why it had commercial applicability. And that's why I could imagine anyone would want this thing. This was seen as like a major piece of good news, right? That this thing was available and everybody used it. It made a lot of things simpler. I knew there was a market for this thing when Signature Bank was going belly up. And indeed, the idea that it was specifically blocked and forced to atrophy and die, to me, was a political motivation, right? It is exactly what both Norbert Michael and Nick Carter are saying here, that this guy, has it almost backwards as far as what's risky and what isn't, right? So, for example, one of the things that Grunberg said in his speech that is systemically dangerous now is that depositors moving their money around should be defined as a systemic risk, one that threatens the entire financial system, right? So a massive deposit outflow from one bank is obviously a risk to that bank. But deposit outflows can only threaten the entire financial system if depositors take their money out and put it under the mattress. What? Or if they do what, right? Obviously buy Bitcoin. Taking your money out of the system, that's what hodling is. Anyone who tells you, oh, you can only hodl Bitcoin, right? Only hodl? Only, you mean save your money, right? Take it out of the system. It is a proactive piece of work to hodl. They make it sound passive. It's not passive at all. It's one of the hardest things you can do, right? To not participate, to protest by pulling your money out, and not just protest, to actively build an alternative system that requires you to have the temperament to not spend it, right? This is not an easy thing at all, right? It's almost like trying to stop the flow of a river with like the force, right? It's not easy, right? Because you've got a whole culture against you, but that's what culture jamming is, right? That's why by saving money and hodling, you're actually performing culture jamming. You are actually jamming the money printer when you do things like that, right? And it's not just hodling, right? But it is important, and I'll explain briefly why. So if you want to read that, it's in Forbes, by the way, this article written by Norbert Michael, excellent article. I liked it a lot. There was another piece that was relevant to this that I wanted to bring up. It's from the Peruvian Bull, right? So he did a piece as well, a long thread about the Dutch guilder and the end of the Dutch banking supremacy in the 1700s. Now, many people have discussed this. Many people have talked about it. Many people have explained what happened. Murray Robarts has one of the great breakdowns of this historical event. A lot of Bitcoiners are aware of it. He breaks it down here, but ties in Bitcoin to show that we were in a very similar circumstance. So here's what he says. The bank was insolvent by 1784 due to market pressure on the florin and an unofficial default of the Dutch East India Company. Although the extent of the damage was not fully known by the market, the initial rumblings of issues were sensed, and market participants held selling pressure on the florin until the bank's eventual collapse. The similarities to the Fed's current predicament are striking. The Fed, like the BOA, sends remittances profits to the Treasury when they are net positive and ceases sending them when losses occur, instead marking these on its own books as becoming equity net negative. The Fed also lends to financial institutions, both in the form of QE, long-term debt purchases, made with reserve balances printed out of thin air, and in the form of loans to other banks. It also engages in repo and reverse repo operations to stabilize the money markets. Just like the VOC, what's the VOC again? I don't remember what the VOC was. Anyway, he has an acronym here that I can't quite remember. The main entity, the Fed, is lending to the United States government, is functionally insolvent. The Bank of Amsterdam had a clear incentive to sacrifice its own monetary policy goals to attempt to save the VOC. Can the same not be said of the Federal Reserve and Treasury? This entity is orders of magnitudes more powerful than the VOC and will do whatever it takes. So I guess the VOC was like the I don't remember, but I think it was like the conglomeration of banks. Anyway, I forget. Do whatever it takes to ensure its own survival, including pressuring Powell and other Fed board members to resume QE if market conditions deteriorate enough. One of the key conditions in the collapse of the florin not discussed in this piece was the emergence of an alternative, a replacement currency, the British pound. As Brent Johnson and others have pointed out, there simply is no fiat replacement available to overtake the dollar as the next hegemon. But what if the next global reserve asset is something they never saw coming, right? Indeed, the Bitcoin is withdrawal. Exactly. Yeah. Bitcoin is withdrawal. So, there it is. Oh, Cat23 has helped me out. So it's the Dutch East India Company. Okay, thank you, Kat. Yeah, okay. Then I just got it. I got it backwards. Oostindisch. Yeah. Okay. Verenigd. Oostindisch. Okay, so Dutch East India Company. Yeah. Okay, got it. Yeah. So thank you. Yeah, because it doesn't. The acronym is different in English, obviously. He referred to it as the Dutch East India Company elsewhere in the article. I think that's why I couldn't come up with the answer. So we can see already from the financial situation we're in, this idea of being able to withdraw from the system is much. Practice your Dutch before you go down. Thanks, Bitcoin Graffiti. Yeah, I'm not going to. There's one language. My understanding is Dutch is like the hardest language in the world, like the most peculiar and difficult, and that's why Dutch people are so good at other languages, or one of the reasons. I went to, when I was at college in France, the Dutch people spoke perfect. I speak French very, very well, right? Pretty much perfect. I got a lot of trouble with writing, but the Dutch people were better writers than the French, and the dictées in French are hard, like writing proper grammar and everything. And as I understand, it's just a really complicated German, right? Like it's German, but harder than German. Less rules, more memorization, more intricacies and stuff like that. But I don't really know, right? I don't like the sound of it, and I don't care if I learn. I'm going to buy like the glasses or something that automatically translate. There's some, I have a great desire to learn. No, it's quite related to English. We are brainwashed as kids on Hollywood. Yeah, I bet that's true. For me, it's just the effort. Like I can only try Arabic. Yeah, or one. Yeah, no, I don't want to learn that either. Not at all. I'm pretty good at Korean. Like I have about 200 words, and I can read and write Korean. I don't know what I'm reading, but I at least know Hangul, the alphabet. I lived there for a couple of years. I could get around in Japan too pretty well, but French and English and a couple Asian languages are all, My German is nicht gut. Mein Vater ist ein Deutsch, but mein Deutsch ist nicht gut. So I can't speak for shit. And my father is actually from a Dutch town, but in Germany on the Danish border. Really, traditionally Denmark, founded by Dutch people years ago, and it was like a no man's land, and then only part of Germany after Bismarck took the north and went right up. Yeah, Kat, small countries do need to be good at languages. Yeah, they do. Portugal surprised me. I thought the first time I went there, and this is that small country thing you're talking about. The first time I went to Portugal, I was very surprised about their capacity to speak English. I mean, really good throughout Lisbon, everywhere. I thought it was going to be like typical Latin places like Italy or France or Spain, where nobody speaks a word of English. Now, that doesn't bug me in France because I'm a local in France, but I don't like being a dog all the time when I can't speak a language and I'm looking around and I don't know what's going on. But I was really surprised in Portugal, and it's that same thing. The Portuguese explained to me that just think of who we are. We're at the end of the continent. Like, who would have come here? You know, it's the people who want to look out on the world and have a different open mind to things, and that's sort of what they tell themselves, and I mean, it's kind of true, you know. So I'm a big fan of Portugal, and that's one of the reasons, right? It's like Holland. It's like a lot of the northern Scandinavian countries in that they speak other languages really, really well, right? Really, really well. Anyway, I'm looking forward to going to Holland next week, or Netherlands. And as I understand, I don't need to speak Dutch, right? Everyone speaks English well enough that you can get around. A very international city. So looking forward to it. All right, let's get back to it. The whole financial situation, right? That's just one of these instances where Bitcoiner culture is obviously way ahead in jamming the money printer, right? We've been paying attention to the intricacies, the ins and outs, and even what this guy is saying, it kind of relates to the Signet and the settlement network, and building an alternative system that can really allow you to opt out of what's happening, and the political ties that bind that whole thing together is the most devastating thing that can happen. And indeed, it could be one of those things that we all know helps put pressure on the money printer because our financial literacy is just much higher. But it's not just that, right? You've got, the FBI question again is one of them that we were talking about, the MAGA hunting, right? That's part of it. But the entire idea of our security coming from these three-letter agencies and things like that. Just look at the reaction yesterday, right? We've talked about it a few times. Yesterday, I don't know if you guys saw, and if you're not American, you didn't know what happened, but yesterday in the United States, everyone's phone did the buzz. This is a test of the emergency system. I don't know if you knew this, right? But Russia did the same thing one day before, right? So some people talking about the coincidence of both of them happening on the same day. John Robb here saying it's a good bet that today's nationwide emergency alert is related to the Russian nationwide nuclear war test drill they ran yesterday. It wasn't covered much in the Western press, right? So some people think they're related, right? But here's a really interesting take from Code Monkeys, right? Ron. So if you guys don't know who Code Monkeys is, he was probably he disappeared. He was probably the leading forensic mathematician in the wake of the 2020 election. He was the one who said, if you add up all these counties, you add up the likeliness, he was able to basically prove the case in his mind, right? It's not real evidence. It's not real evidence, right? So I don't think he has got a smoking gun, and you have to read in a lot. There's a ton of narrative bias in interpreting his data. But what he did say, and it convinced me, and I remain more or less convinced because of Code Monkeys about what happened in 2020. If you look at the statistical anomalies, just the math of what happened, right? It was impossible, right? So do I understand the math that Code Monkeys did? No, I don't. Did I see his work? No. I didn't do any of that, right? So I don't really know if he's right. He just seemed directionally right to someone who's doing their best and doing their own research, which is obviously never a good look, right? It's never a good look, right? So I more or less think he's right. But here's what he says about the tests, right? He says and so he disappeared in the 2020 time. Some people thought he was a plant. Some people thought he was the opposite of what you'd want, right? Some people thought he was insidious, right? So he disappeared. Now he came back recently when Elon bought Twitter and is now talking again. And here's what he said about the EBS tests, right? The EBS test alerts are a way. Oh, by the way, Code Monkeys is a Bitcoiner. That's how I thought to have faith and confidence in him years ago in 2020. Again, another part of this. It's not a you don't give extra credibility to a Bitcoiner, but at least it gives you a start to interpreting them, right? If someone is a Bitcoiner, you have now there's tons of bad Bitcoiners that you shouldn't trust, right? I'm not saying trust every Bitcoiner, but it makes me partial to people, right? It makes me think we're on the same team and things like that, which can be used to manipulate you. So be careful. But here's what he says. The EBS test alerts are a way for the feds to track everybody's cell phone without requiring a warrant or serving a subpoena to the cell phone companies. Without any probable cause, warrant, or subpoena, they pinged everyone's devices and received a ping back from everyone. Right? So that's what he says. Now, Bitcoiners, right, already have a mistrust of these institutions, of these three-letter agencies, of anyone who's out to get us like this. But this is another one of those instances. What the things at the same time? What's going on here, right? It's another one of these things where more and more people are going to have questions, and more people are going to say, "What the fuck is happening? Right? Why are we doing this?" And that's what happened yesterday with these tests, right? It went off, and everyone was upset about it, right? Everyone was upset. It gives you a heart attack, right? But it's not just that, right? We can go back to the Ukrainian spending that's related to this, right? That's related to this security, like we're gonna keep you safe, right? Ding, nuclear attack, right? That kind of thing. You can even see with the media yesterday and this Ukraine question, right? Fox News again, they had Brian Kilmeade on, right? And Brian Kilmeade was talking to one of the reps that voted with Matt Gaetz, right? And he's doing his most sincere furrowed brow. He's not doing the Jake Tapper, like, I feel bad. What is the bad things on the CNN that the Trump did, right? When he does his face like this, you ever see Jake Tapper on CNN? Whenever he's trying to influence you, he does this. Brian Kilmeade was trying to do like his Trump, like looking mad, right? We gotta get Republicans getting help from Democrats, ousting the people. What about Ukraine, right? What about Ukraine, right? So all of a sudden he's all angry, yelling at this guy. What about Ukraine, right? But Americans, even the ones on Fox, are getting this more and more. They're understanding what's going on. More and more people are starting to see what happens and are starting to see what's going on. Tom is saying that YouTube is trash and is crashing and free. I'm not getting any indication I've had any trouble this morning on the broadcast. Please tell me if there has been interruptions and stuff, because so far I'm seeing perfect. And if it's not, I want to know. If it's not, I want to know. So let me know if you see it, right? So, you've got the question of Ukraine becoming less and less credible in the marketplace of ideas. You've got more and more people thinking about it, questioning it, more and more people capable of having a conversation about its corruption and what's going on. And you've got even yesterday Kennedy saying the following, right? What's America's number one priority, right? Mitch McConnell says it's to provide assistance to the Ukrainians. Is that true? Or is it the only priority of the Democrat and Republican Beltway elites, right? So coming on top of it, getting close to it, and nearly there, right? The climate thing, again, with the Pope that you heard about, right? Of course, everyone making fun of him today for being just absolutely low IQ. Steve Malloy, junk science. Steve Malloy is great. He's a guy who just breaks down junk science. There's not even any like bonus content. It's just like, this is how stupid these people are. So he calls them the Red Pope. The Red Pope swings and misses on the origin of warming and emissions. So he breaks down the whole article, right? So yeah, this is what the Pope is saying. It is no longer possible to doubt that human anthropic origin of climate change, right? So it's anthropic now, right? The Pope just makes it up, that breaks down all the details about how stupid he is. Here's another one of his comments. It is not possible to conceal the correlation of these global climate phenomena and the accelerated increase in greenhouse gas emissions, particularly since the mid-20th century. And he says, the Red Pope imagines the fake 97% climate consensus is science and attacks capitalism. It is, so he says it's capitalism, obviously. The change in average surface temperatures cannot be explained except as the result of the increase of greenhouse gases, right? The Red Pope has apparently never heard of the Enzo cycle, geothermal heating, changes in solar radiance, things like that. And then he finally concludes, the Pope is really poorly informed, right? The climate change has never been reversible. The climate is a non-linear, chaotic system. Ocean acidification is a hoax, as discussed earlier. And the Pope obviously takes his time to advance collectivism, right? Never waste a crisis. Individualism is bad. He blames it all on individualism, by the way, in the thing, right? Certain apocalyptic diagnosis may well appear scarcely reasonable or insufficiently grounded. This should not lead us to ignoring the real possibility that we are approaching a critical point, right? Of course, he closes his letter with an attack on irresponsible U.S. emissions, right? It's, of course, America. If we consider that emissions per individual in the United States are about 2 times greater than those of individuals living in China and about 7 times greater than the average of poorest countries, we can state that a broad change in the irresponsible lifestyle connected to the Western model would have a significant long-term impact. As a result, along with indispensable political decisions, we would be making progress along the way to genuine care for one another. It's genuine, right? Thank you, Pope. Thank you, Pope. Ivor Cummins says the following. This guy and the Vatican were compromised by the big guys way, way back. He struck a Vatican COVID-19 coin. Did you guys know that? That he minted a coin, and it's a young guy getting injected by masked doctors. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that gorgeous? Isn't that one of the greatest things you've ever heard? That the Pope minted a coin for COVID? You cannot write this stuff. We do absolutely live in a simulation. There's no other way to explain this. What are the odds? A Vatican coin? A coin? When do they mint coins all the time? Maybe. I mean, I know they have the power to mint a coin, but here they are minting coins, right? So there you go. Now, again, that whole aspect of seigniorage, right? And seigniorage means lordship, right? The ability to, if you translate it, seigneur is a lord in Latin language or in French, and a seigniorage, the ability to print money, is basically lordly activity, right? Another reason why Satoshi Nakamoto is a peer, right? A peer as in, peers really are, they're lords, right? Peers, the House of Lords, are peers with each other. Other people are not their peer, right? The real word peer is just for them, right? It's for the people who did Magna Carta and told the king, hey, buddy, mess with us and we'll kill you. And that was almost 1,000 years ago, right? They were the peers. Than everybody else, right? And that's another piece of Bitcoin culture, right? That is the same culture we've adopted. Those same lords that went on horses gathered together, told the king, "You're going to be dead," right? If you don't share your centralized node power with the 12, I think it was 12, maybe it was more. I don't remember how many lords did it originally. However many it was, right? Say it was 100 lords, right? If you don't distribute the power to the 100 lords right now, who are collectively stronger than you, we're going to kill you. And so he was like, okay, yeah, here you go, take the powers, right? Whatever he did from then on, the king, he had to ask permission from the lords, the peers. The peers had to confirm whether or not the king could do it. And that's the beginning of the British legal system. And it came all the way to the point where we are now at this instance of banking being a major part of this peerage network. Now, not in reality, right? I mentioned the lords are the only peers, but we now have this thing that we were just talking about with Norbert and the Peruvian bull and the end of the Dutch situation, and how the American situation looks very similar. And that's why Peter Saint-Onge has been saying this, right? So here's what he's been saying about the next rate hike, right? How we're at the final rate hike. We're at maybe the end of this system, maybe the end, because of things like being able to withdraw from the system, being able to have a pressure valve as this thing collapses. And when he says the following, right? When Fed starts cutting, things will break, right? And this is about a Bank of America report that came out. 276 rate hikes are finally crushing the global economy. But history says the real storm comes when they start cutting rates, because cuts means they broke it. History says it could be a big one after $23 trillion of central bank printing, 5,000-year record interest rates, and an economy battered by activist governments, right? FX Hedge says the final rate hike is typically what leads to the beginning of real panic. Because if they pause and consider cuts, it usually is because they have broken something. If you are paying attention to the news, everyone is discussing now the final rate hike. Everyone knows that the economic data is rapidly turning negative. The only question now is how bad the bust will be during this cycle. Will this be 2008 style or 1970s style, right? Now, as we're even talking about this, Peter Saint-Onge says the following, right? In this context, and this is why we're culture jamming, he says, defense stocks fall as paralyzed house with no speaker puts U.S.-Ukraine aid at risk. The world is healing. So the defense stocks are coming down because the political turmoil in America is causing turbulence within the money laundering system internationally. And now you've also got people who are getting targeted by the government and probably not going to be interested in paying their taxes anymore if they're on a fucking FBI list, right? So it's happening, right? And Doomberg here brings up the following about where it could head next with the gold people, with Menendez. Remember this Senator Menendez, the one who's being the corrupt guy? Now, I 100% believe Menendez is corrupt, 100%, right? I do not believe there is an honest bone in this guy's body, right? So I'm not going to be defending him in the way that in a partisan way. I'm not going to say he's innocent or anything like that. What I am going to say is I think he was set up. I think he was. I'm just guessing, but my impression is he wouldn't play ball anymore and is probably getting some cold feet now. 100% mind reading, 100% speculating, 100% guessing, right? Probably got some cold feet, probably said, I'm not going to do this anymore, right? Because apparently, like, if you read the story, look how crazy it's come. Apparently, now that he's gone, if you just go on CNN, they say this like it's normal. They say it like it's normal, right? Now, we come here every day, right? We try to follow all this stuff. I got a bunch of university degrees, a bunch of experience. I've been on Wall Street. I've worked in an executive branch of a major country's government. I've been all over the world as a professional doing this stuff. It's hard to follow how complicated most of this is. Really hard, right? Apparently, Menendez, with his lobbying for Egypt, stopped F-16s from going to Turkey, and Turkey was preventing Sweden from joining NATO. So the CNN comes out and just says it like this, like a matter of fact. Oh, Menendez is arrested now, so Sweden can join NATO because Turkey won't block it because they can finally get their jets. It's just now, it seemed like Chinese to me. I didn't even know what they were talking about, right? Who knows any of that stuff? Who could keep track of any of this stuff? Now, when I say Menendez was set up, I don't care about all this Turkey, Sweden bullshit, right? It might be the reason. What my instinct was, it was the gold bars with this gold bar thing, and then the money in his pocket. right? Like he didn't take the bribe out of his. He had like windbreakers with his name on it, and they found cash. The pictures are like his windbreakers was stuffed with cash, right? And then just like gold bars willy nilly, right? Now maybe he was just like a really lazy, unorganized criminal. Right? It could be, right? It could be. But Doomberg here talks about the projection of the image and the gold pictures. Now, he's not saying set up for not being corrupt anymore, right? He's saying an alternative reason why they've projected Menendez to be this way and framed him this way. Here's what Doomberg says. Singling out one politician is a de facto exercise in selective prosecution. And to our ears, this case is as much about gold as it is about Menendez. In Golden Handcuffs, published in March, we warned that the tactics being used to crack down on the crypto community could just as easily be deployed against owners of the precious metal, potentially leading to a reinstatement of the ban on private gold ownership in the US. We predicted now how the propaganda supporting such a move might reveal itself. Now imagine Russia's Putin and China's Xi make gold a centerpiece of their anti-US dollar gambit, designing an effective propaganda campaign to justify outlawing private ownership of gold would be a relatively easy task for the eye of Sauron. It would look something like this. Gold owners are rich tax cheats. Gold owners are Putin sympathizers. Gold owners are unpatriotic. Gold owners are being well compensated for turning in their bullion. Gold owners represent a national security risk. Gold owners are enabled organized crime like illegal drugs and sex trafficking, right? And he says, but what we should add, gold owners are corrupting our politics to the list, right? What makes Menendez ill-gotten gold all the more peculiar is his failure to take advantage of one of the most audacious legal loopholes Congress has ever created for itself. In a brazen institutionalization of corruption, it's perfectly permissible for U.S. lawmakers to indulge in all manner of insider trading activities that would land the rest of us in jail. If Menendez had simply helped himself to this perk of public service, he might have avoided the need to bathe in the seedy underworld of New Jersey cronyism. Take a position in a stock, work with the company executives and lobbyists to insert legislation that helps move the stock in your desired direction and profit accordingly. Is it really that simple? How widespread is insider trading? What did I say last week when the Menendez thing came out? I said exactly this. I said, is it just another corrupt politician? Really? Like, why him? Why him? I think Obama might have had a problem with him for the same reason when he was in trouble under Obama. He probably wasn't willing to do what must be done and was saying, maybe these guys are going down. Now, I'm 100% guessing. I don't know. I've never met Menendez. I'm never going to hang out with Menendez. I'll never know anyone who was close to Menendez. Don't know any of that stuff, right? And I don't think we'll ever know, right? I don't think it's a big enough story. He's not like Menendez is not. He's just run of the mill, right? There's nothing special about him. But this projection that Doomberg gives here, that you could start using this to tarnish people and create a case against gold, is, I think, valid, right? I think this makes sense to me. At least it passes the sniff test for me, right? And complies with what I already see now. I am absolutely a victim of narrative bias here because I've said it last week that the Menendez thing stunk a little bit, right? Now, do not hear that I've defended Menendez. He's a criminal, right? I don't care what happens to him. If he goes to jail, rots, I don't give a shit, right? If he dies tomorrow, it'll be the same as I said with Dianne Feinstein, right? They've helped themselves enough. I don't think we owe them any, like, oh, the public service. Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you for going to lay wreaths. Thank you for going to ceremonies. Like, I don't care. I don't give a shit. Right. So there you go. But nature is healing and we're learning about all this stuff. Right. So the culture jam goes further, right? The culture jam goes, Bitcoiners' ability to be financially literate, ability to be media literate, makes none of this stuff work. We can already tell you it's coming down the pipe. They're going to call us these names. They're going to try this shit. We've been talking about the gold stuff forever. There's a reason why Satoshi referenced the gold confiscation mandate, right? There's a reason why our culture in Bitcoin has been interested in this stuff. There's a reason why Nick Carter saw Operation Choke Point 2.0 as an effort to prevent an alternative financial system to arise, which would bring us right back to what we were talking about at the fall of the Dutch thing and what people were talking about when it comes to having an alternative to the US dollar, a release valve, some other place to go, and perhaps Bitcoin being exactly that, hodling being exactly that, withdrawing from the system as a devastating blow to the entire edifice, right? Now, there's a few other things here where Bitcoiners are figuring it out, right? And a few other tactics that can work, right? One of them, being health again, right? Another reason why the culture jam is going to happen. Bitcoiners survived on Twitter all those years, were able to effectively join with the COVID critics, the COVID doubters, the COVID skeptics. And now here's what you're looking at, right? Here's where Bitcoiners can show and can show their greater ability to understand the world in front of them, their greater ability to be literate in things that are going on, and apply it to changing the world. So you can see it right here. There's a huge psyop going on, something I mentioned last week, right? The Taylor Swift thing. Now, yesterday, Aaron Rodgers, who was a speaker at Bitcoin 2022, right, was on a show talking about Travis Kelce, I don't know how to say his name. He's the tight end that's now dating, I guess, Taylor Swift. Mr. Pfizer, he called him, right? Now, people are saying, is this relationship real, right? It's what I said last week, right? I said, I don't know. Legendary Energy, Anomaly, who you got to love, right? Legendary Energy, one of the great 2016 Trump supporters, early abandoning of Trump, totally abandoned Trump during COVID, will not support Trump anymore. I think if he had to, he'd vote him because he dislikes Democrats so much. But he's been one saying that Trump is not your guy for a long time. So what I would say is a very credible person in that he says what he means. I don't always agree with him, but I do love him. I think Legendary Energy is one of the best Twitter accounts you can follow. And absolutely one of the most, I think anyway, just my feeling, I've never met him, but I've watched some of his content. He just looks sincere, like he believes it, so I could be wrong. I could have stuff about him wrong. It's just my feeling, and I would recommend him. So just to tell you, I recommend him. Here's what he says. 1, Taylor Swift gets millions of women to watch the NFL, demographic help. 2, Taylor Swift gets NFL to promote her to an astronomical amount. 3, Pfizer's new poster boy gets more press than anyone in sports to push vaccines. It's all too obvious and forced, right? So, I mean, it sort of checks out with what I have, with what I've seen. All right. So I got a couple other little stories here about events. The boys doing you guys see the tech conference, and all those boys came in. It was a tech conference for women only. So a huge swath of the men identified as non-binary and attended. Cernovich says, if you're not doing this or telling your kids to do this on college applications, you shouldn't read me, as you lack the vision and will that it takes to return this country to some baseline normalcy, right? I'm with him there, right? If you're not scamming that you're a trans, gay, furry, whatever, right? Do it. Like, just get the benefits, right? This thing is going down. No one's going to remember. No one's going to care, right? You got to just jump in. You got the Pope yesterday. Was that what the Pope was doing? Going around with all of these circus people and everything, right? Got to jump in, guys. Got to jump in. It's okay. It's okay. You're not going to get hurt. All right. Yeah, the Pope prints his own money. How do you think Bitcoin change benefit or morally destroy current suspect? So I think they're all going to fall really quick. I mean, they only exist in antithesis to America. If there was some other system they could join, I think they would. I think they would do it immediately. I think the Cubans probably have PTSD from dealing with the deep state in America from an early time. Not that they're innocent. I mean, I don't think there's a lot of good guys down there anymore, and heavy brainwashing. Just threw up in my mouth, actually. I believe in Sinterklaas. He means chocolate coins. Yeah. Bitcoin graffiti. I told my kids about Black Pete. They're so worried. They're gonna get their toys stolen. I've told them what he does. Oh yeah, it's true. He is an Argentinian. I forgot about that. Yeah, Jesus, Felipe. Oh, get someone you're in Amsterdam. Yeah. Proof of Pope coin. Yeah. I really think all are corrupt, but only get caught when they want them out. Yeah, probably not. I mean, not all. P-man, there are, for as someone who's met a lot of these people, there are some who are not corrupt. The problem is they're a little low IQ because they think they can make a difference in the system, and in the future there'll be people like that. I think it will attract a better quality of person. The problem is they kind of believe it too much, Agreed, P-man. Want them out or to set up their agenda. Yeah. Smash the like. We love the like. We love the like. If not Bitcoin, then what? Indeed. Yeah. Through deflation from technology extending, though deflation from is extending the fiat, it sure is. Yeah, that's a good way to put it, Bitcoin Graffiti. I haven't seen it that way. I'm peeing all over the unisex toilets. That is a great. I'm going to start doing that. Canada is known for its clean toilets, right? Compared to the United States, our public toilets are actually always generally amazing, right? But that might change. That might change if too much of this stuff catches on. Who would want to share a washroom? What woman would want to share a washroom with any man? I can't imagine it. Like they're the worst. Male washrooms are terrible. I saw the conference thing was a great troll. I hope it's not even a troll. I hope people just start doing this. Everyone should, right? Return to the trickster. Yeah. We love it. Yeah. Everyone has to do it. Everyone has to do it, right? You gotta just identify as a something, right? Get that benefit. It's the golden age of fraud. We had Elizabeth Warren, the lady running all of this stuff. Yeah, more toilets are dirty now. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, the Canada's still pretty good. I think it's because we have enough illegal immigrants and things like that. You can pay anyone. I don't think it's from the people anymore. It used to be had no one cleaning it, just people were thoughtful and we would never leave a mess. Those days are long done. Wonder why no one wants the Gulf dinar. Strongest world currency, 1 dinar, about $3. Probably a liquidity issue, my bet. Liquidity is a major thing when it comes to access, right? You don't ever want you don't want them to have to print it to give people more of it. That's the issue. And there might just not be enough. Right? Yeah. All right, team, that's all I got. Let me know if I missed anything, if there's any story out there I didn't catch. I was going to talk a little bit about, this is just another one. This is, I guess, a paper jam, culture jam thing. The ADL. This is exactly the type of thing we need to do in general, right? This is exactly it. So all that stuff with the ADL that that Elon pulled in the last couple of weeks, right? Giving them shit for running the boycott, advertising boycott. So I guess the threats worked, right? Elon said he was going to sue them into the ground. And now ADL released the following statement yesterday. We appreciate X's stated intent over the last few weeks to address anti-Semitism on hate on the platform. Elon Musk writes, thank you for clarifying that you support advertising on X, right? And now the ADL is actually itself advertising on X, and also very much appreciate that ADL has bought advertising on X. Very good. Very good. Yeah, I will share that, guys. I will share that. I have not liked my video version, so I'll just share the text. I will. I've been stuck in formatting hell. but we'll get it done. All right. Peace. Take it easy, guys. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you all tomorrow.